residents, hippies, earthlings, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and whoever you're lucky enough indeed to be doing it to. I'm Bushka on Blitz, and this is number 4 on the list of my favourite tanks of all time. Nah, screw it. It's number 3. This is crazy. But I'm doing these videos without releasing. I've just decided it's going to be number 3. And the tank it's going to take out is the VK2801. You just heard it here. I just made that decision right now. I can't help it. I've got... Oh, man. I have issues. But the VK versus the Cent 701 is a conversation that I've gone backwards and forwards on in my head time and time again, and I'm just making a final decision now. My gut said, no, this can't be number 4. That's crazy. It's got to be number 3. And it does have to be number 3. Let's talk about the Cent 701, and I want to talk about this tank because it is an absolutely special tank for me. Anyone that's watched the channel for any length of time would know I was very contrarian with this tank. People hated this tank. It was around at a time when the T-54 and the Russian mediums dominated, and no one really, you know, there was so many other tanks that people would rather drive than the Cent 701. And I fell in love with it, and it became my favourite Tier 9 medium. And that is saying something, considering that I put 1,500 games into the T-54 and thought that thing was the best tank since sliced butter. But the reason I really don't mix your metaphors, Bushka. The bread was sliced, not the butter. But I really fell in love with this tank for a couple of reasons. One thing that should be obvious is I love British tanks, and the big part of British tanks that I adore is gun depression. They have almost universally superb amounts of gun depression. 10 degrees, in fact, for the Cent 701. Number 2 is they have just absolutely gorgeous weapon stats. They have high pen guns for the most part with excellent accuracy. And number 3, and more importantly, they have HESH, baby. They have HESH. HESH! High Explosive Squash Head. And High Explosive Squash Head allows you to rip off the most vicious, sweaty, nasty doses of heavy tank hit point trading while driving a medium. And the thing I really like about it is it allows you to do it, but only if you're good enough. I know that sounds arsey, but if you just point and click, it won't work. And that's what really attracted me to the Cent 701 in the first place. I'd been used to driving the T-54. The T-54 could load heat, press a button, and pen everything. The Cent 701 had to work for its money. It had to be smart. It had to be played intelligently. It had to set shots up. It had to really be in situations where it could use what it had going for it, i.e. gun depression and a gun that made the angels cry, to put massive numbers out. This is a Tier 9 medium in a Tier 10 game. I've used gun depression and all the nice stuff, and I'm about to reel off just an arseload of damage in a very short period of time. And I'm going to do it to places that the E75 really doesn't think he should be getting hit for 454 by a Tier 9 medium. But I'm not just going to hit him once or twice. I'm going to bounce him, and then I'm going to hit him again for 550. And that's HESH. That's HESH. That's 1,000 damage in 2 shots to one of the toughest Tier 9 heavies in the game. And not coincidentally, a tank that made the top 16 of my all-times favourite list, the E75. Now, if you love Russian mediums and brawlers and high DPM, super good armor profile tanks, this is not the tank for you. This tank is a stately tank. It is a tank that doesn't go very, very fast, that doesn't have a whole lot of turn fighting ability, that doesn't have much in the way of, let's say, armor. It's a tank that only really works as a gun depression tank or a sniper. It can make good trades when it's needed, but it is not the tank that you want to be front lining in versus Tier 10s as a Tier 9. But you can see there, if you can find vehicles that are susceptible to Hesh, you can put all kinds of hurt into the marketplace, dropping so much damage there on those 2 targets. It's incredible to think that this is a tier 9 medium tank, and it's beautiful because so many people can't play this tank. And Wargaming had so many issues balancing Hesh. It's a funny thing because the Cent has been buffed and buffed and nerfed and buffed and nerfed. It's a tank that, when driven well and driven by good players who are experienced with using different ammo types, is just devastating. But it's a tank that, even then, if you get stuck in a turn fight, you're not going to win. You're not going to... there's only so much you can do with this much mobility when there are just too many tanks. But the gun will just not let you down. Look at this thing. I mean, if you can get elevated and go turret down, hull down, you could just... You can... Like, they're going to get me. They're going to get me because there were 5 of them, or 4 of them. And, you know, I'm just one very, very fat, slow British tank. But they're going to pay for it. I'm going to make sure that all of them feel the wrath of the L7A1, which is the Cent's Hesh-firing monster. And back to my point, you'd get players that were very, very good at the game who could turn the Centurion 7-1 into a killing machine. And then you get people who would roll forward and not understand how the premium ammunition works, especially when the game had very, very, very few tanks that had a premium ammo loadout that did less damage, less pen, but more damage. I never had any issues with it. I loved it. I loved it, and I still absolutely adore it. And that's why it is number 3 on my list, not number 4. And that's saying a massive amount about how much I value the quality of this vehicle, considering that number 4 is the VK2801, which has my highest ever win rate, like 92, 93% over 100 odd games, and which I drove on my contributor account into the ground. It's just a tank that once you get used to the playstyle, you will never look back on. And it's a tank that I really enjoyed because so many of my mates said that you're crazy, it's not that good. I think Chapo's was the first one to really pick up on how good the Cent 7-1 was. Until I started looking into it and driving it and using Hesh, I was pretty much a confirmed Russian medium-aholic, and to a little, to a lesser extent, an E50-aholic. Well, not to a lesser extent. I had a massive crush on the E50 for a long time. And that's another one that I loved when so many people were like, no, that tank's crap. But look, once I climbed on board the Cent 7-1 train, I was just addicted. And a big part of what I love about the 7-1 is it's a super high ceiling, super low floor tank. So you see 471 into a bat chat, followed by, what, 30 or something into an STB1. It's HE sometimes bounces. Hesh is not like normal HE. It will quite literally just bounce. But when it doesn't bounce, it leaves great gaping holes in the sides of any tank that's silly enough to give you it. I reiterate, if you want to get better at the game, drive a tank like this. It requires a subtle touch. It requires thought and precision, because you don't have the lights out mobility of a VK2801 or a 62A or you know, an LTTB or something along those lines. You don't even have like a T-54's crazy armor profile and super quick you know, super quick turn of speed and turn fighting grace. You're a big... Look at this. I mean, that's a tier 10 medium and you're just going to smack him for 400 and walk away. Ugh, very, very nice. So you've got to learn to use gun depression. You've got to learn to get above your target. You've seen how many shots I've bounced on the turret of this thing. Yet if you were to look at it on a flat surface, the turret is a very, very easy pen if you are even slightly above the tank. But if you can keep the turret slightly above the enemy, then it will bounce. And there's another one of those 550 max rolls that the crowd so much adores. I think it's going to be hard for me to, I mean, deciding on the top 5 in this thing was crazy. I had a list that I went backwards and forwards on, backwards and forwards on, backwards and forwards on. And as you already know, because you've seen the video, the E50M came in at number 5. And that was probably the cutoff point for where I was capable of making rational decisions. After the 50M, it became so emotional. I was so invested in the top 4. They all meant something to me. And the Cent really was a turning point for me as a tank driver. It was when I kind of first went against the grain and said, hey, I know you all love the T54, but I think this is a better tank. And I think it's more versatile and that it can give you more, it can bring more to the battlefield because it's got a certain particular set of skills. The pen on the gun, the accuracy of the weapon, the hesh, the gun depression, all those things combine to make the Centurion 7-1 a tank that is just criminally overlooked even now by drivers the world over. And if it sounds like I'm a little bit biased towards British tanks, sometimes I am. There's a lot of tanks that made this list that are British tanks, and there's a lot of tanks that just got cut, like the Carnarvon, the Tortoise. These are tanks that were in the top 16 and for one reason or another just didn't quite get there. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys, if you haven't already given the Cent 7-1 a chance, give it a rock and roll sometime. You might be disappointed. Not every tank is for every human, but this for me is a tank that it would be incredibly hard to part with. I'm Bushka. Thank you so much for watching. Look after yourselves, and until next time, stay safe on the battlefield. Bye for now.